It all starts long before any dough is formed. The basis of a good panettone lies in the ingredients. And here's a curiosity that few imagine. The large national manufacturers have entire teams dedicated solely to measuring the quality of the ingredients batch by batch. Nothing is left to chance. Flour, for example, is a key component. It seems simple. After all, bread is made from flour. But in this case, it needs to have a specific protein content. Why? Because this content determines whether the dough will withstand a long fermentation without collapsing. If the flour is too strong, the dough becomes too elastic and almost impossible to work with. If it is weak, the panettone simply does not rise. That is why many industries maintain fixed contracts with mills that can always deliver the same exact standard of flour. The second fundamental element is the yeast, the true heart of the panettone. Although each brand has its secret, they all use some type of sourdough starter or industrial levain, which is fed daily and needs to be monitored like a living organism. And that is exactly what it is. Millions of microorganisms transforming sugar into carbon dioxide, alcohol and acids that give that characteristic aroma that we love to smell at Christmas. In many factories, this sourdough starter has been active for decades and has never been fully replaced. It's like a living lineage that accompanies the tradition and evolution of the brand, almost like a grandfather who tells stories while helping to shape each panettone. After that comes the part that already makes our mouths water: butter, sugar, egg yolks, chocolate chips, or candied fruit. Each of these ingredients plays a fundamental role, and any minimal variation can change everything. The butter needs to have an exact melting point to melt at the right moment during kneading and incorporate evenly into the dough. The sugar cannot be too refined, because if that happens, it caramelizes too quickly in the ovens and interferes with the final texture. The egg yolks, pasteurized and filtered, create a homogeneous texture that facilitates the aeration of the dough. And the chocolate chips, they go through a process called refractory confectionery, which helps to maintain their shape even after the intense heat of the oven. That's why when you bite into the panettone, the chocolate chips aren't completely melted inside. They're there, at the perfect point, waiting for your palate to explore every little bit. The initial mixing of the ingredients takes place in giant industrial mixers, some with the capacity to process hundreds of kilos at a time. They work in stages. First the dry ingredients, then the liquids, and finally the fats. And why is that? Because each ingredient reacts differently to the movement of the dough. If everything were added at once, the final texture would be unpredictable, something the industry simply cannot allow when producing on a gigantic scale. To ensure consistency, sensors monitor the temperature and density of the dough from the very first minute. If the mixture gets too hot at the beginning, the enzymes degrade and the panettone loses aroma. If it cools down too much, the fermentation doesn't progress. And believe it, at Cacau Show and the largest factories in Brazil, this initial stage alone can process more than a ton of dough per hour. Even so, when you look closely, it feels like a surprisingly delicate process. The dough rises, slowly breathes, forms bubbles, gains elasticity. It's like watching an organism come to life. Right after mixing comes the hydration period, where the dough is left in large resting vats to become more flexible. This moment is crucial to determine whether the panettone will be soft or dense. The water needs to be distributed throughout the gluten structure, and this requires calm, precision, and time. Here begins one of the most impressive stages of the entire production: industrial kneading. If in the artisanal process the movements are repetitive and slow, in factories the work is done by giant planetary machines with paddles that rotate on different axes simultaneously. This cross-shaped movement creates a continuous stretching effect, strengthening the gluten networks while incorporating air into the dough. The result is that soft and elastic structure that every panettone needs to have, a structure that will allow it to rise upwards and not collapse when cut. And there's a fascinating technical detail. Sensors installed on the sides of the mixers monitor the dough's resistance in real time. When it reaches the ideal point, the machine automatically reduces the speed to prevent the dough from breaking. During this phase, delicate ingredients begin to be added. In premium chocolate panettone, for example, a special chocolate cream is incorporated. In other chocottones, millions of drops need to be distributed in an absolutely homogeneous way. And for this, there is a process called late incorporation, in which the drops are added when the dough is almost ready. This way they don't melt, don't form a paste, and don't stain the dough. After kneading, the dough goes to the first fermentation. In controlled chambers, temperature and humidity are precisely adjusted so that the yeasts work at the ideal pace. If the chamber is just 1 degree C above or below the planned temperature, the final texture and volume can be compromised. And here's a secret. The dough should never be handled roughly after this point. Strong movements can expel the air bubbles that have formed, affecting the final volume. That's why the transition to the next phase is fully automated. Stainless steel ramps and conveyor belts transport the dough with minimal impact to the dividing machines, capable of dividing hundreds of pieces per minute, each with exactly the same weight. This precision is essential. If a panettone weighs less, the consumer notices. If it weighs more, the industry loses money on a gigantic scale. Next come the balling machines, which rotate each piece to create a smooth and uniform surface, preparing the dough to rise steadily within the traditional paper molds. The second fermentation takes place inside these molds, lined up on huge trays that run through rising tunnels. The dough rises until it reaches its final volume, creating that characteristic dome that we love to see. This phase can take hours and varies according to external weather conditions. On very hot days, the internal humidity needs to be adjusted to prevent the surface from drying out. On cold days, the machines work overtime to reach the ideal level of growth. With the dough at the perfect point, one of the most critical moments of the entire process begins baking in tunnel ovens. These tunnels can reach tens of meters in length and bake hundreds of panettones at the same time. Inside them, the process takes place in different zones. First, a heat shock to stabilize the dough. Then, phases of gradual cooking that develop color, aroma, and structure. The dome of the panettone, that rounded top, is not just aesthetic. It indicates that the internal expansion was balanced. If it cracks on one side only, it is a sign that the fermentation occurred unevenly. When they come out of the oven, still warm and fragrant, one of the industry's best-known rituals begins, inverted cooling, where each unit is hung upside down on metal structures to prevent them from collapsing while the dough is still hot and malleable. Without this procedure, the panettone would lose volume and look squashed. In this case, gravity does the work, and the process can take several hours. Before any panettone goes to packaging, each batch undergoes rigorous quality control. Technicians analyze texture, moisture, weight, elasticity, and distribution of drops or fruit. Some factories use industrial tomographs that scan the inside of the panettone as if it were an X-ray, ensuring that there are no bubbles that are too large or areas without filling. It's a level of precision that surprises those who imagine that panettone is a simple product. When everything is approved, the final packaging stage begins. But this packaging is not just aesthetic, it's engineering. The still warm panettone undergoes a resting period to stabilize aromas and prevent condensation. Then, mechanical arms fit each unit into protective, metallized polypropylene bags, which act as shields against moisture and oxidation. This type of film is responsible for keeping the panettone fresh for weeks. It's not just pretty packaging, it's applied science. After that, folding machines assemble the traditional boxes that every Brazilian recognizes, precisely synchronizing the positioning of panettones and packaging. Smart cameras automatically detect the best positioning of the unit inside the box, ensuring that no one comes out crushed or tilted. Then robotic forklifts arrange dozens of boxes into perfect blocks, wrap everything with shrink film, and prepare for transport. During the Christmas season, manufacturers operate distribution centers at a fast pace, many running 24 hours a day. Trucks travel throughout the country, some even refrigerated, when necessary, to ensure that the product arrives without changes in texture, especially in warmer regions. And here's an impressive fact. At Cacau Show and other major brands, demand forecasting for each state is done months before Christmas, using historical data, average temperature, and regional purchasing power. That's why you almost always find panettone available even in small towns. Another little-known aspect is seasonality control. Because Panettone has an extremely concentrated sales peak, usually between November and December, factories need to adjust their entire operation throughout the year to support this increase. Some industries even redirect entire machines and teams from other lines to reinforce Christmas production. And when December passes, the line gradually returns to normal, ready for the next cycle. After following this entire process, from flour to transportation, it becomes clear that Panettone is much more than a simple sweetbread. It is the result of a gigantic industrial chain where biology, chemistry, mechanical engineering, and logistics work in harmony to deliver a Christmas symbol that delights millions of Brazilians every year. And now I want to know from you, which part of this production surprised you the most? Leave it in the comments. I really want to know. If you enjoyed this content, you know what to do. Leave your like, subscribe to the channel, activate the bell so you don't miss any episodes, and share this video with someone who loves Panettone as much as you do. And if you think you've seen it all, then you can't imagine what awaits you in the next episode. It's already appearing on your screen. Click on it and come with me to discover another secret hidden behind the scenes of the country's largest industries. Big hug, and I'll see you in the next video.